Hey everybody, welcome back. We are in St. Martin in the Just Flight Tomahawk. I was going to do a video on the Tomahawk today, but something else has come up. So I want to talk to you about flight controls. Now, the flight control settings that we have in Microsoft Flight Simulator would seem to make some sense, but they really don't. And I haven't flown this plane before, and I did a video earlier today, and the flight controls were just wacky. And I didn't feel comfortable posting the video and giving a poor impression of the airplane, given the fact that it's quite possibly and actually quite likely that it's actually the sensitivity settings of the flight controls that are the problem rather than the flight model per se of the Tomahawk. So let's go into what I've got set right now. So sensitivity is not quite what one would think it is. All right, you would think that if you decrease the sensitivity on the sensitivity scale here, which Microsoft could have put some buttons on so we could actually get a number we want, um, you would figure that that would make them less sensitive. Okay, I mean that makes some sense. I'm gonna kill the extremity dead zone here actually before I show you what I was gonna show you. So there's 0 and there's 0, and reactivity actually is quite self-explanatory. It makes the controls react slower. So 100% reactivity reacts instantaneously, whereas something less than that it's going to cause the physical movement you make on your controller to take a brief period of time before it actually happens in the sim. So that kind of makes some sense, but what we're dealing with here is the twitchiness of the yoke and the twitchiness of the rudder pedals, right? And so you'd figure by lowering your sensitivity, look how much I've got this sensitivity down, 75%, and reactivity of only 40%. So that's a 60% reduction in reactivity. You would figure those would give you some pretty strong, or have a pretty strong impact on the flight controls in the plane. So let's have a look and see whether this airplane is any more controllable with those settings. So we're ready to go here. Toes on the brakes. Let's release the parking brake and let's get going. So we're bringing the takeoff power in, and immediately the nose goes right. And here I am trying to hold center line. And I mean, it's okay, but I've got to do some work here. And once we get up to 65 knots, we'll pull back on the yoke. And that's pretty good. So that's not too bad, right? Well, let's restart this and let's do it with real weather, because the weather right now in St. Martin is a little iffy. So let's get back into the sim. And here we go. And again, here we are with real weather. I don't know why it just switched ends of the runway, but it did. That's kind of odd. I don't know why I would have done that. But anyway, let's see what we get with real weather, because with no weather, it's not too bad. All right. So power coming in, and immediately the nose just dives one way. And now I'm making a legitimate effort here to stay on center line. I'm legitimately trying to stay on center line. And let's get airborne. And again, I don't quite know why they switched ends of the runway on me. But we'll now try to make this turn out here before we get... And I mean, the only way I can describe it is that it feels like the plane doesn't... It's either overreacting or not reacting at all. So let's get into a... Actually, let's make an attempt at a landing here, which is going to require us to go to the correct end of the runway. And we can bring some power out here. And I like flying just by sound without having to look at the tack. And we'll put some flaps in. We've got some rain here off the end of the runway. So we'll see what we can do here. And we'll make it in here inside of this rain. Getting some more power out here. Bring in that next notch of flaps. And let's see here. See how it's just... See how the nose is just pitching up and down? I think it's because it's just out of phase with what you're doing with the yoke, right? It's out of phase with your physical movements. In other words, because it takes so long to have an impact, you're reacting to something that happened a split second ago, which is not... I just can't... I just can't control the airplane. And kerplunk. So that's what you'd kind of expect. So now let's go into the controls options and have a look at something else. And I've talked about this before. I don't know that I've ever explicitly done a video on this, and this is not an explicit video, by the way. Come here to 0. I don't know why they made these sliders. I mean, it's okay if they're sliders and they have like a plus minus button on the ends. That would be fine. But it just seems like there's nothing they could have done to make things more complicated in this in some ways. And I know 1% is not going to make any difference, but I want 0%. So there's 0. So let's go 100% reactivity, 100% reactivity. And now let's put in a extremity dead zone value of 25%. I'm just making this up. This is just out of thin air. 25% there on the ailerons and 25% on the elevator. So we'll go there. Then we'll come over to flight rudder pedals, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to get rid of... I mean, you saw how sensitive... Turning the sensitivity down by 75% made absolutely no difference whatsoever when it came to making the rudders more controllable. So let's go 25% there. Apply and save. Go back. And let's give it another try. See which end of the runway they put us on this time. And let's give it another try in live weather. It's gusty and spitty and nasty in the Eastern Caribbean today, as you saw. All right, so toes on the brakes. We'll go parking brake off. Fuel pump is on. Don't need any flaps. Mixture is rich. All right, now let's see how we do in terms of controllability. Takeoff power's coming in. Takeoff power is set. .65 knots. And we gently ease it off the ground. Might want even more. Might want even more extremity dead zone on the rudder pedals. But it gives a feeling of, because the slower you're going, I was going to say it gives a feeling of weight to the airplane, but it's not really weight. The slower you're going in an airplane, the soupier the controls are. They don't react very much because they need wind moving over them to react. And so it's not about taking away sensitivity. It's just about making them kind of work the way they should. And we're doing alright, so I'm going to pull some power out here until I hear that power change. We'll put in a notch of flaps, and again, like the nose pitch is down, but I can just control it now. $70 knots, not too displeased with that. Nice boat. But I don't feel like things are happening slower in terms of the controls reacting to my inputs. All I feel like is that there's a little bit more. There's a little bit more. I guess weight is the way to put it. Would be the easiest way to describe it. But see how I'm just holding the nose here and I'm not chasing the pitch? Whereas in the last approach and landing, it was like up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. And now this, I just feel like I've got it held. Got it held and it's right where I want it to be. Got the power coming out. See that? Right on the downwind wheel. Right on the downwind wheel. I'm going to try one more. I'm going to kick this extremity dead zone up on the rudders. I'm going to kick it up maybe 35%. With 35%. And done. And then the flight controls, maybe just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. 30%. I think actually in aileron it wasn't too bad. Just a little bit more on the, whoopsie, that's not what we want. What we want is to restart. And now let's see what we get. Alright, here we are again. Because I think I was blaming the airplane for poor control setup here. Alright, takeoff power is coming in. Nose pitches right, or pitches left immediately. And it's taking me a second to adjust because you do have to put more rudder in. Look at this. And you have, in a real airplane, real single engine piston, you got to put in, I mean, when you hit the power for takeoff, I mean, you really have to put a bootful in. You really do. And yeah, I think the ailerons feel pretty good now. I mean, I really, in some ways, don't quite understand what even the other controls, the sensitivity and that stuff is even for. Because what I would think you'd use them for, that combination of other controls, you don't use them for at all. You just, all you need is the how cool would that to be flying an approach right now in the Princess Juliana? That's what I planned on doing today. I was going to do an ATR flight, and that would have been the coolest thing in the world. That would have been the coolest thing in the world, to fly an approach through that rain. Huh. That would have been amazing. That would have actually been one of the more unique flight sim experiences. 80 knots. I know already that's going to drop the nose. So again, I just feel now with, I'm trimming, so that's gonna, I'm trimming and letting the nose down, so that's gonna help help with my airspeed control, but that's why that nose is pitching up and down right there. But now I really feel like I've got control of the pitch. Really feel like I've got beautiful control of this pitch. Let's hope I don't botch the landing and ruin my own theory. Power coming back. Power out. And then just pull that nose up, hold it off. Not as quite as good a landing as the last one, but the point is, if you're dealing with a twitchy airplane in Microsoft Flight Simulator, don't bother with sensitivity, don't bother with reactivity. They're not going to help you. Put in an extremity dead zone, a positive extremity dead zone. The more twitchy it is, the more of an extremity dead zone you're going to need. And it takes out part of the range. I'm not gonna even pretend that I can explain it in a really intelligent way, but it gives you, it makes it much less sensitive, much less twitchy, but in a good way, in a very, very good way. So you're not getting out of phase with with your physical movements and the movements of the airplane in the sim. Feels really, really good. So I would advise you guys to give that a try if you're having problems with twitchy airplanes in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Hope you guys are doing well.